Hey everyone, all this push for mass immigration, in addition to being detrimental for the housing market, jobs, and wages in this country, in particular for the Canadians who already live here. That's right, Canada. Wages in this country have been stagnant for 4+ decades now, thanks in part to this massive push for globalization. And is only going to get much, much worse now that mass immigration has been brought into the equation and ramped up under the federal Liberals. To keep the central planning hacks in big government and their corporate counterparts happy and ridiculously wealthy, they're willing to sell you, your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren to sustain that scheme they got going. And they don't care how many people are harmed along the way. Headline out of the Financial Post, forget interest rate decisions. Loony traders are banking on immigration to Canada. Flood of immigrants and non-permanent residents to levels not seen in a century, a main driver supporting Canada's economic expansion. So there you have it. It's right there in black and white. The main driver for economic growth in this country is coming as a consequence of the rampant growth in big government, bureaucracy, public sector institutions, and pencil pushers who all make big bucks under this mass immigration program. And we sure as heck can't forget about all those corporations who now have access to hundreds of millions of people from foreign countries to keep wages suppressed for the foreseeable future. This is being reported by Sheila Hagan, December 20th, 2019. In an era of low global interest rates, currency traders will have to look elsewhere for an impetus. In Canada, they can bank on population growth. The flood of immigrants and non-permanent residents to levels not seen in a century has been one of the main drivers supporting Canada's economic expansion over the past several years. That has kept the Bank of Canada as an outlier in the global easing trend, as it held its policy rate unchanged, bolstering the allure of the loonie. These high levels of immigration, if they are to continue and help support growth, are actually supportive of a Canadian dollar over time. Francis Donald, chief economist at Manulife Investment Management, said in an interview in Toronto. That's right, Canada. At the end of the day, you're just modern day chattel, just a number for a bond issuer, your corporate owner, or your political overlords. It's all about increasing Canada's GDP while sacrificing entire generations to do so. Like I say, folks, they'll do just about anything to keep this scheme going. The country's population grew by 208,234 in the July to September period, or 0.6%, the fastest quarterly increase since at least 1971. Some 83% of that increase is due to international migration, according to estimates from Statistics Canada released Thursday in Ottawa. Over the past year, Canada's population has jumped by almost 560,000, an increase of 1.5%. That's the fastest annual pace since 1990. So think about that, folks. Think about these numbers. Put them into perspective. Over 208,000 in just a 3-month time frame. And over 500,000 in just the last year alone. Which actually, if you include some of these student visas, there's a lot of other things that probably aren't even being included in that particular equation that brings those numbers up. And I've seen as high as 800 to 900,000 and maybe ultimately 1 million over the course of just 1 year. But even if we just stick with these numbers as they're being presented, over 560,000 people brought to a country with a population of only 37 million in just 1 short year is going to have a massive effect on the social, economic, and cultural fabric of this country. This is a story I think markets are missing. How powerful immigration is at actually changing your financial markets, particularly your rates and foreign exchange, Donald said. The Canadian dollar is on pace to take the #1 spot among its group of 10 counterparts this year, strengthening by about 4% against the US dollar. Canada's population boom has driven robust gains in the housing and labor markets, countering the effect of an aging demographic. Yeah, robust gains in the housing and labor markets. But once again, that's subjective. Robust gains. If you're a boomer that's sitting on one of these proverbial gold mines, aka a house or condo, this is great. Bidding wars, smaller supply, increased demand, that's all beneficial. It's all gravy if you're on the receiving side of that equation. But once again, if you're a millennial or now the Gen Zers who are finally starting to come to age, if you're any of those people from those generations, home ownership or even rent these days is ever increasingly out of your reach. So basically, for you millennials and Gen Zers, what your parents and grandparents are saying to you, not to your face of course, but behind your back, is it's still all about them, no matter how much economic or social pain it may cause for you for the rest of your lives. And if there's not enough of you to take care of them, or forced to pay into the government coffers to pay for all the unfunded liabilities and entitlements promised to that big boomer cohort who are now heading off into retirement, well, they'll just make up the difference with this mass immigration push. What's fascinating about the story, however, from a strategist like myself, is not even how it relates to GDP growth, but how we're substituting one form of policy for another, Donald said. While Donald argues immigration can be a proxy for monetary policy, currency strategists say the central bank is still the main driver of the loonie, and immigration is more of a long-term variable that can influence policy. Currency strategists, central banks, print money, devaluing the currency, and destroying every Canadian's purchasing power and the value of their intellect and labor. Yeah, that's working. It is working out great. So I guess what they're saying here is, in conjunction with mass immigration, aka the Great Replacement, along with big government, crony corporations, and the ability to completely manipulate and devalue our currency, I guess all those in combined will work out, at least they hope, to keep the gravy train rolling or hum along for the foreseeable future. Or as long as the baby boomers are around. Because at the end of the day, that's what all the policies seem to be focused on in this country these days, is what benefits the boomers. Sorry for the harsh reality, but it is reality. Anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. And once again, I'll just say, I don't blame immigrants for wanting to come to this country. Not at all. None of these videos dealing with mass immigration are meant to paint people who come from some of these third world or emerging countries to a modern Western developed country such as Canada. I don't want to suggest that these people are bad by any stretch of the imagination, nor do I fault them for wanting to improve their lot in life. Now, at the end of the day, the blame should rest squarely on the shoulders on those who are the central planners in big government, the corporate leaders, and the Canadian people who keep voting for the parties bringing about these policies and changing this country so drastically. That's where the true responsibility and blame should lie. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.